Star Trek: The Next Generation was a show.
Star Trek: The Next Generation
everybody I
was
interacted
a
with
show that I started watching when I was a really little kid. Can you believe it's been 30 years? Star Trek: The Next Generation first.
Star Trek: The Next Generation was my life as a kid. It was the escape from reality.
Welcome to Next Generation's First Generation, where Patrick Delmore and Sascha Shouties take a look back into their favorite childhood show, Star Trek: The Next Generation. This is where we attempt to reconcile how we felt as children watching the show and looking back as old farts now in our late 30s, almost 40s.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Next Generation's First Generation, where we cover Star Trek: The Next Generation 30 years after it aired with exciting audio commentary. I am Patrick Delmore, and with me as always is Sascha Shouties.
Hello!
On my left, the triumphant return of Nigel.
Hello everyone!
Hey, Nigel!
And sitting in Matt's chair, like a more dignified Counselor Troy, is Jem.
Hi!
So we got a very interesting episode for you today. We are watching the 20th episode of the third season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Tin Man. We got it on the Netflix this time, so if you can sync with us, great. If not, try to catch up, and we'll give you the countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Look at it buffer, ladies and gentlemen.
Every day I'm buffering.
Yeah.
So the first question that I would ask is, do you think of Wizard of Oz first or Miranda Lambert first? Probably most people think about Wizard of Oz first when they think Tin Man.
Remind me of Miranda Lambert.
She's a country singer who has a song named Tin Man that is a nod to the Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
So.
The USS Hood is closing on an intercept.
Oh, we hear about the Hood every now and then in this show.
The Hood.
We weren't notified of the rendezvous. It seemed to be an awful error. Sir.
The Hood as in how it's referred to nowadays as the Hood?
No, like it's a ship called the USS Hood. It's
And that's the Captain of the Hood?
Yep.
Out here, you never know who's listening.
Very Keith Carradine-esque guy there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man, the good old boys teasing each other.
Yeah. It's like we always like it when another human comes to say hi.
Picard looks genuinely a little
Galley.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
there. Like, oh, look, he's teasing me about my ship being on a luxury liner.
Starfleet's got new orders for you. This is top priority. They need the fastest ship in the
So apparently these orders are so important they couldn't broadcast it
Yep.
over subspace. They had to go ship to ship.
Well, it's a Romulan issue again.
Oh, those Romulans.
And we have a passenger for you.
And they have a passenger for him.
Hard to send, but
Oh, nice.
mission specialist. He'll bring your orders aboard with him. His name is Tam Elbrun.
Uh-oh.
Did they say what the mission is for?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, the same Tam Elrond who tried to betray our country to the hated British?
Your orders are
Oh.
ready. Best of luck, folks. Look out.
So hear that music there?
Sir, the Hood is slowing to impulse.
It's a new musician. It's a debut episode for a new musician.
You know him?
This guy's named Jay Chataway,
Ah.
and he's the gentleman who scored the Inner Light episode.
Oh, nice.
Dun dun dun!
The guy who gave Picard's flute its voice.
Yes, that's right.
Now,
So it was just basically revealed that the person that was coming on board used to be a mental patient.
Of Troy's, which makes me wonder why she should have. She really isn't allowed to say who was her previous patient.
but we at least she doesn't tell them anything about like what they discussed.
Yeah, no HIPAA violations here.
Yeah.
Well,
Does
just
it matter
saying
he was
that
a
you're
patient at a university setting, though?
Yes, it's still.
Yeah, totally confidential.
I remember I did counseling at a university, and they had confidentiality
Oh, yeah.
protocol. in
Probably
place.
even more so.
But at the same time, he's a mission specialist, and this guy has a reputation of being not so great. He's associated to a disaster when you look at Riker's response. So it was probably in the mission's interest for Troy to tell the captain, hey, this guy used to be a patient of mine.
Yeah.
So it's within context. I think it's appropriate, and it's not like she was talking about this at 10 Forward or in the hallway. It was on the bridge.
There's still
that's the office.
There's still people that are working at bridge stations that are getting a lot of scuttlebutt from senior officers that they probably shouldn't have. Like, it's one thing if she said it in the meeting room.
Oh, or in the office. Like,
yeah.
Can I pull you into your office really quick? We need to talk about this guy.
But that would really concern him. I mean, if she got him in private, I mean, his hackles would be up more than they already are. Yeah. Basically, what it is this is a guy that's not well liked already, and he's associated with a disaster where a bunch of Starfleet personnel died. It's kind of like Hillary Clinton's association with Benghazi.
Oh, okay.
It's not that she necessarily could have done anything about it, but it's like there's certain people that, already really hate Hillary Clinton, and
they'll never get over it. So, I completely forgot to mention, this is April 23rd, 1990 is when this came out. And this story was actually written by two gentlemen, Dennis Bailey and David Birchoff, and they were inspired to pitch this episode after watching and hating the first 5 minutes of Samaritan Snare.
Huh.
If you remember Samaritan Snare, it was where the Enterprise encountered the ship full of intellectually underdeveloped hijackers.
Yes, the Packlets.
Yes, and that was quite the controversial episode, at least for this reviewer.
Well, this, and they've moved forward with this in a lot of the fiction. This casts the Beta Zeds in a terrible light. Because this guy is not, at least from what we see, would not be that difficult to accommodate what his, quote, disability is. Well, basically, he has kind of a precognitive ability where if you start talking or you're formulating a thought, he hears it ahead of time and wants to respond to it.
He doesn't give you a chance to say what you need to say.
Right. Now, if he was another alien species, not a Beta Zed, who that was the established way that they communicate, that's how they talk to him.
You know what? I understand what you're saying, and here's what I'm going to tell you. Just kind of like that, where he kind of jumps the gun in his response.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he has the perfect job for him to have, which is figuring out the communication styles of other aliens.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that he's got this reputation of being just a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, he has what in his species is and I don't want to use the term disability, because I mean it hurts him socially, but it's not necessarily a hindrance. I mean, it's given him a high position.
Well, it's social soft skills.
Yeah.
He's more interested in what's happening right now. He doesn't really have time for feelings, which is ironic because with someone who is so sensitive to other people's feelings, you'd think that he'd want to tread lightly. Yeah, so
here's Riker telling Geordi basically why the guy is screwed on the ship, because Riker took what happened in that disaster very personally. 2 of his classmates died, and the captain of another starship was also killed.
Our destination is the Beta Stromberg.
So we missed a whole lot.
Yeah.
With that conversation between I didn't catch his name, the guy from the Hood. The Hood?
Tam.
Yeah.
Tam. And everybody else. He was a jerk to Picard. Obviously, and he acted all lovey-dovey about Troy, and completely dismissed Data as just, basically he was the help. Just kind of brushing him off, go and do your thing, android, because I almost feel like he feels threatened by him because he can't read him.
Oh, what it actually turns out is that he really likes Data because Data doesn't give off any thoughts.
Okay. But it just, the way that it sounded very dismissive when he was just like, oh, you're supposed to be somewhere in 10 minutes. Go and do your thing. And It reminded me of a harsher Pulaski in the way that Pulaski views Data.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I can
Where
see
it's
that.
like you're just an android.
Well, what was the significance of Measure of a Man? Did that completely change Starfleet's opinion about whether or not Data is a human, a person, or just a...
He's not. Yeah, he's his own thing. He's not property.
I don't
But he's
think
not
that
property. But does that mean he's not? He's on the same level as a person, or just like a tricorder?
He's the same level as a person, so he is a sentient being with all the rights.
But does everybody in Starfleet believe that though?
They don't believe that,
but
but they have to. They may not believe that, but they have to act accordingly. Code of uniform and everything. He's a lieutenant commander. He needs to be responded to as a lieutenant commander. I mean, we saw in the very first episode with him and Riker, where Riker asked him if his rank of lieutenant commander was an honorary rank.
So what we are hearing in the mission briefing is that there's this ancient creature that is a living spaceship, more or less, that's parked itself next to a sun that's about to go supernova. And the Starfleet wants to send the Federation out to... the Federation wants to send Starfleet out to investigate this creature because it's such a one-of-a-kind, unique life form. And the Romulans are also interested, so it is a race to get to the creature first, and whoever can communicate to the creature first will supposedly win the prize. I think that's what they're expecting, is to have some kind of technological and scientific breakthrough by heading up this creature. When I remember watching this as a child and looking at Tan's eyes, it freaked me out that they were all black. It didn't occur to me until rewatching this series now that all Beta Zeds have the black eyes.
Yeah.
They're just contact lenses they're wearing.
I don't know why I never noticed that.
It was so subtle I didn't realize that it was makeup.
Should have brought up the Romulans earlier, but I was distracted.
It just, yeah.
Oh, I love
can't-
this. Look at this.
Billy boy, I was distracted on Garusha. If Darson had listened to me, no one would have died.
So this is where Riker is kind of having his own internal thoughts about Tan, and Tan's calling him out and having an argument with his thoughts.
Well, it's great because, being a civilian, he gets to just call Riker Billy Boy.
Yep.
I think it's interesting that, they've studied psychology, so they've learned to be that way, or are Betazoids normally, naturally empathic?
Oh, so we go into that here in this episode, where the reason why Tan was a patient of Deanna was that here we go, we're explaining it right now.
Oh, okay.
He's very high on the ESP scale, he's a prodigy. When he was born with all his powers turned on. Most Beta Zeds have to train their powers up.
Except for some reason that no one understands, occasionally a Betazoid child is born different.
Okay.
How different?
Born with his telepathic abilities switched on.
So
Most Betazoids born like
they go into this. There's a great. It's an audio drama, but it's done as a podcast called Star Trek Outpost, and they do a lot of stuff with the Beta Zeds, which is nice because they're unhampered by having to adhere to anybody else's rules other than their own. But the Beta Zeds are not that great to people that are abnormal. At all, and especially to this is a thing that happens. He's not the only one that this has happened to, but he's not treated well. He's regarded as a problem.
Yes,
even though in this utopian world where they find the right job for everybody to do, and they've found the right job for him, they don't want to necessarily accommodate his disability appropriately.
I think it's more than that. In a utopia where they can fix all the problems, when they encounter a problem they perceive as unfixable, they shun it.
Yeah.
Because it's so rare that you come across an unsolvable problem, apparently, in this society.
I want to point out, because we brought it up the last time that Data was in command, that Wesley called him Data and not Commander Data, and he has corrected that. Now he is calling him Commander Data.
Either it is a sensor malfunction, or another ship is following us covertly.
So Data figured out they're being trailed.
Agreed.
I like Mr. Data. He's got some good problem-solving skills.
With their cloaking device, we shouldn't pick them up at all.
So Data is higher in the command chain than LaForge is?
They have the same rank, but Data is the second officer.
They're like kind of department heads.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Any sudden change in its
it's kind of interesting. The chain of command gets kind of muddied by the time you get to Data. It's like they're equal but different.
Geordi, as we've seen Geordi in command of the Enterprise already.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. That's right.
So this guy, the actor is Harry Groener? 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 Anyway, he is best known for Mayor Wilkins in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, yeah! How did I not pick up on that? Of course that's him. Yes.
Yep. Just in case you're wondering.
Charming. You want them to dislike you. Why?
Because I'm not a nice man.
That's such a terrible thing to say to him. I mean, I guess she's picking it up empathically, but saying to somebody that's going through something frustrating, saying that maybe that's how you want it to be.
She knows him, though. I think she's calling him out on a familiar level, not as on a professional level. And that's something that two people who know each other intimately will do. It's just like, come on, cut the crap.
Yeah.
This is what you're doing. And his whole thing is that there's too many minds, there's too many people, it's loud.
Yeah.
And he just wants them not to focus on him.
At least a little how I felt.
It's a great shirt on him. That's a Wesley Crusher special right there.
Yeah. The man leggings and everything.
And the pants.
The pants are awesome.
The pants have what, frills on them? What do you call
They're
those?
like little folds.
Yeah.
They remind me of ribbon.
They'd be hard to iron, though.
And then there's Grushka.
I think the what you do with clothes is that once you've worn them, you put them into the replicator for repurposing.
There you go.
I thought everyone knew.
No.
Well, yesterday my shirt was a boot.
Like, yeah, pretty much. I mean,
About what? About a boot a size too small?
Yeah, about it. Har.
Hi, Canadians.
We have a few Canadians listening to this show.
They'll appreciate it then. Maybe.
Send me Tim Hortons.
Yes.
love me some Timmys.
Mm-hmm.
So he's discussing what happened with the disaster, which, again, Riker is reacting to, Federation scuttlebutt about it and not the official report. Like, it was investigated, he was cleared.
Mm-hmm.
But Riker was like, yeah, he was still there and I didn't see him get punished and I'm not okay with that.
Well, because of his position. He's a civilian.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really have to follow strict protocol. And the issue there was, it was a tense situation. He was doing negotiations with a new species. And as we see in Star Trek, they're really forgiving about accidental deaths when it comes to meeting a new culture that doesn't understand who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, you did something possibly so offensive that they killed your buddy. Well, it's not much we can do about that other than dang. I think that's kind of what happened in the Garishna incident.
I mean, talking to them instead of
primarily, if it's a first contact situation, the captain of the ship is not going to be there, and he was. So somebody said it was okay for the captain to be there, and there wasn't any chance he'd get killed.
So here, Mr. Tan is about to reveal himself for the bigger part of the plot.
Not like us at all.
So Troy's calling him. It's like, why did you volunteer to go on a ship full of 1,000 people if you know you can't take all the noise? And he is kind of exposing that he's already in communication with this mysterious spaceship.
How can you know that?
Telepathy over light years. And this actually comes
You're
from
in contact
It's inspired by a novel called Tim Woodman.
Huh.
That was written in
Called Tim? T-I-M?
Tin.
Okay.
Tin, T-I-N, Woodman. And it was a story of a child prodigy who was a psychic and put on a spaceship to go make contact.
Huh.
And
Oh, that's cool. Who wrote that?
It was by the two guys who pitched this episode.
Was it a published novel, or was
Yeah.
it like something that they wrote and couldn't get?
It was a published novel in 1979 on April 1st.
Hey.
David Bischoff and Dennis Bailey, so the two screenwriters for this episode, also wrote their book. So basically, they took their book and they pitched it to Star Trek.
That's awesome.
Greatest marketing ploy ever.
Right?
Astrophysics reports.
And this was during the time when they were taking fan scripts.
We are receiving relay sensor data from the Vega probe.
Well, I think Star Trek has always taken fan scripts. One of the few shows that does.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that they use them frequently, but they do accept fan submissions for stories.
It does look like a seed. Or a squished pine cone.
Yeah.
So that squished pine cone there comes from, what did I call it? It was something from
Dark
the
side.
something. Oh, it's killing me. I lost it in my notes here. I had it right in front of me.
The eighth. The something.
Something from the 8th
Duck
dimension.
Dodgers.
The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai
That's
across the 8th dimension. So Tin Man, the shape of it was inspired by a component of a spaceship in that series.
Huh.
So here we
So
go.
it was a movie, not a series.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. Like, you have to have been of a certain age to have seen it, and I was not of a certain age when I finally saw it. And I was like, I understand why people like this, but I wasn't in the right spot to. It's one of those things like Labyrinth or the Dark Crystal, where it's like, if you were not in on the ground floor, you're not going to be with it when you see it later.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I plan to go back. Excellent effects on the HD, by the way.
Oh yeah, that looked really cool.
Oh man, this is really the first time where we see the Romulans and the Federation kind of go at it with no context, no conversation. It's who's going to the finish line first. The only reason those Romulans opened fire on the Enterprise is to slow them down.
According to my sensor readings, the warbird has exceeded maximum engine output by 30%.
You know what I don't understand is that why doesn't Troy seem bothered by 1,000 people on ship? And
She's not full beta Zed.
Oh,
and
that's right.
So she developed her psychic ability, and again,
When
it's
she was in
less
adolescence.
than what everybody else has in adolescence. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a very sloppy analogy where in autism, you're overstimulated.
Right.
You get too much coming in at one time, and you have a hard time processing it. This is Tam.
No.
And so Troy, to answer your question, in other beta Zeds have the ability to filter out the noise.
Okay.
So they can still hear the other voices on the ship, but they can choose not to listen to it.
But Tam has no filter.
That's correct.
Okay. No, I understand being bombarded with, everybody's feelings. Like, I get that.
Uh-oh, Jordy just named that guy. Something's going to happen to him.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Sorry,
no.
Russell.
Where's the bridge? Captain, I'm trying to feed the inner grid by stealing some power from the structural integrity.
Can't they just put, guy that died in credits?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have to have a name.
So the guy who was the stunt coordinator for Die Hard was a red shirt in the original Star Trek series.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Is remote. And if you will be still, Mr. Elbrun, you may learn. What? Being first at any cost is not always the point.
He shouldn't have had to say what right there.
No.
Like, he would have already known what to say, what he was going to say.
Well, just because he knows doesn't mean he can't challenge him on it.
He looks clearly in pain, though.
Yeah. That line about being first at any cost was a total dig at this guy.
Being prodigy.
Yeah. Because it's like saying to somebody who stutters, like, what do you want?
We like Data's quarters. We don't see enough of it.
Yeah.
It's so clean. It reminds me of an Apple store.
Well, they use the daylight lighting in there rather than the warm light in the rest of the ship.
What's behind that red
I think they've said that Data's processing ability is like less than an iPhone, in fact.
Oh, no, it's more than that.
Lots of workspace, not much room to live. I don't guess you sleep.
I have tried it from time to time, but you are correct. I do not require rest.
I wonder how often Data has to change out his uniform.
Oh, it's a painting.
Yeah. Oh, Data and his paintings.
Yes.
Oh, the fire station has something to say.
Yes. You're at Kentley Studios, right above the fire station.
It's ironic that the sirens happened just when the cover came up.
Oh,
I like to think that that's not a piece of fabric, but that's one of Data's Sherlock Holmes robes. Hanging over that.
There you go.
Life force is being maintained, yet there is no evidence of a crew aboard. Tin Man is a living.
So they're trying to explain where's the crew of Tin Man and what's the purpose. So he was created, and what's his purpose? And now we're kind of going into the existential.
Or do we exist?
Do we exist to exist, or do we exist for a function? And that's a really interesting question to ask an android. It's like,
that's what he just said too. Yeah.
Well, who's seen Prometheus?
Oh, I believe I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the big the idea behind that story is people going to find where humanity was created, and they have an android with them, and the android at one point asks them, "Why did you create me?" And they say, "Because we could." And he goes, "Well, I hope when you get where you're going that the answer you get isn't anything like the one you just gave me."
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
I think Data was created to exist, if that makes any sense.
Maybe.
Like, Data was not an afterthought. Like, if you look at his inspirations to kind of understand existence, and then his growth in the future, you have all these programs that kind of awaken as he kind of goes into adolescence, I guess you could say. He starts to dream and whatnot. Uh-oh. We are doing more fighting things.
No! We're not the target! It's Tin Man.
Uh-oh.
What do you mean?
The Romulans are going to kill Tin Man.
Destroyed.
Those are their orders if they can't secure the alien.
Increase speed to intercept the Romulan vessel.
Their lead is too great, sir.
Increase speed to intercept the Romulan vessel. That's some Kirk acting right there.
Yeah.
Danger. Come to. Do not allow.
They just sent a message to Tin Man, and Tin Man just had an epic space fart that pushes everybody out of the way. Oh, it kills the
Kaboom.
Romulans. Goodbye, Romulans. And the ship gets shaked while they shine a flashlight at it, and some beautiful back rolls.
Nothing available yet, sir. We have partial failure of the main
And that's going to be so hard to report. It's like, did Tam intentionally do that to the Enterprise?
It was.
How do you make that determination? Because you got a bunch of people there that think a lot of different things about him, particularly the first officer.
Was he going to risk his own safety, though?
True.
Well, it was all impulse. He didn't think about safety. He's just like, protect yourself.
We don't know that we have 20 hours.
He really didn't have anybody's welfare in mind other than that creature's. And that kind of goes into the first disaster, is that he was so into just communicating with that thing that the person in the way got hurt.
Yeah.
Priority, get the shields up. Only let's not have any more surprises until I'm done, okay?
Don't ask me about surprises. Ask Tam Eldra.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
Thanks, Commander. I'm glad you let me know you were going to be that way about it. It's like, I knew that from the time we were in the turbo lift together.
Every time we see Riker, he's angry about something in this episode. He's actually the ship's grumpy guy.
Yeah.
Good.
Every ship needs one.
Because I want to know it's
It's funny because watching this show, I always thought that Picard was the grumpy guy.
Picard evolves. Riker's gonna hit the ceiling in
That's all.
Best of Both Worlds, and he doesn't really have anywhere to go after that.
It calls itself
Retirement.
Gum.
Yeah.
In fact, even Shelby says, "You're in the way."
Mm-hmm.
It's roamed the universe for many thousands of years.
Ah, here we go.
How many?
Far away.
The truth comes out.
Maybe beyond the galaxy.
This Gum 2, or Tin Man,
Millions of them.
exploring the galaxy by itself
It hasn't seen another of its kind.
in a millennia. A millennia that's 1,000 years.
Yeah.
It may be the last of its species.
So basically, back in King Arthur's time, this thing was roaming around with its other buddies.
Can you ask it to
Yeah.
return with us to Federation space? At least persuade it to leave the vicinity. of
Absolutely
its
would not be safe for them or for Juntu to go back to Federation space with them.
The star will go
They would have to. What they would have to do is, if it wasn't, if the episode didn't shake out the way that it shakes out, is they'd have to build a research station out there to work with it.
in space.
And that's one of the things where
Radiation penetrating the outer layers.
him wanting to work with Data could have gotten Data reassigned to that project. And it would have a hard argument.
Oh, that would be... Well, Data'd be up to it.
Yeah.
Such loss.
So apparently there's an explosion in space, radiation killed all the crew.
Tam, stop this. You're losing yourself in this merging.
And you're acting.
Tin Man hurts and wants to die. I can't do any more from out here. If you want me to reach Tin Man, I have got to be in physical contact.
I love how they skirt around the word suicide here.
Yeah.
It's
You don't trust
they make it sound more like
No, Tam, I don't believe it.
an animal that goes out to pasture to die.
I don't think they ever actually mentioned that word, because there was that one where there was that guy that couldn't. Something happened to his family, and he didn't feel like he was.
Oh, yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and it ended with him killing himself.
Yeah, he was the
defector, right?
Yeah.
No, not the... Well, yes, the defector, the guy killed himself, but also the one with the couple on the planet where him and his wife...
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they just glossed over it like it was no big deal. It was really weird.
even Tin Man's.
But I don't think they specifically said suicide there either.
They do say suicide a few times in this show in context, like ritual suicide. I know they say that. Remember where Worf takes a whole bunch of indigenous people on the holodeck to move them, and one person discovers where they really are and they can't cope.
Riker to the forge. How's it coming?
Not good. I think all the control processors are shot. But maybe if I swap the chips from the secondary array, I can
So,
get you a
some
minimum
techno
grade
babble.
scan.
Trying to get the ship restarted. What's that guy's name again?
Russell. Yeah.
Russell.
Okay, Russell.
Only.
It's got the old season 1 uniform on with the shoulder triangles.
Go.
Oh.
And the front zipper.
Yeah.
The classic Geordie whistle.
Mm-hmm.
Put that right up there with, now whoa,
Yeah,
slow down.
Exactly.
What? One moment, Commander. Confirm. Sir, the other Romulan ship on an intercept.
Another ship coming in. Enough with the Romulans already.
I still want to superimpose a keyboard underneath Worf's hands right now.
Yeah.
Like a piano.
Look at that galaxy map. That's kind of cool.
Really cool.
So
On the globe.
I've seen those. Yeah. So the idea is that it's all the constellations from a perspective opposite of Earth. So the Earth is in the center of the globe, and then you've got a clear shell around it with the painted constellations. Cool.
Now he's strongly drawn to this creature.
Deanna's hair just looks like she's been through a lightning storm.
Yeah, it was very Elaine Bennis.
I was thinking Texas. Got some big hair there. Do you think that's her actual hair?
I think so.
Like her.
Yes, because when I would see her,
bangs are just
she would
so
occasionally
high.
be in other stuff. Like she's in an episode of Sherlock Holmes that
Okay.
BBC went from around this time and has very similar hair.
Well, to be fair, they butchered her look on the show because she's a very decent looking person.
I mean, she doesn't look bad there.
Nope, not at all.
It would be a grave mistake.
Thank you, Bob.
So they're discussing whether or not to send Tam over to talk to the creature. And Data's all for the scientific opportunity. Troy's concerned about Tam's mental breakdown.
Tam to fulfill his mission. Tam Elba warned Tin Man. The first thing it did was to destroy a space vessel. I believe I understand, sir. If you feel the risk is too great to send Tam Elba
Sucked into this episode.
So when did you get to watch it when you were younger? Both of you guys.
I do not remember this episode from being a kid at all.
You don't remember?
I
any?
remember it, yeah.
Did you even comprehend the idea of empathy and mental health and all of that stuff?
It's different when you're a kid. So I would have been 8, right? And everything, and this is a show about adults, and everything with adults is how you behave dictates how you will be treated.
Right.
So
it was kind of
I would have been on.
that
I would have been on their side, probably
Yeah.
not on Tam's side, because like I at 8 know better than to talk to people the way Tam does, and wouldn't understand like
That makes
impulse control or disability.
See, I viewed it from the complete other angle. This is the first episode that kind of opened my eyes. They're like, hey, why is everybody being a jerk to this guy? He's obviously really sensitive and has a serious problem.
Interesting.
In fact, I kind of felt like everyone was being a bully to him, and they're trying to do their best to go through this situation. If anything, I saw Tam was just using the Enterprise to fulfill his need to escape to a better life.
Sister ship by the star creature. We claim right of vengeance. We will destroy the alien. If you interfere, we will destroy you as well.
Oh, Romulans.
So a second Romulan ship showed up.
Riker's hand placement up with his thumbs hooked under his armpits. It's gonna smell his hands in a minute.
The next time I'm on video chat with someone, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I mean, that's really uncomfortable. Try it. Just.
Yeah. I was just thinking of Molly Shannon in Superstar.
Superstar.
And now his fist is in his hip pocket.
So now the Romulans, right? The Romulans
what
have
makes
kind
his
of
back feel better? What makes Jonathan Frakes' back not hurt? He had a bad back.
the Romulans have pushed Picard's hand, and Picard has to make one last Hail Mary throw to convince Tin Man to come home with them. So they beamed on.
Such an interesting looking ship.
Very organic.
Yeah.
And they came up with the sound by feeding a guy a whole bunch of pizza and recording the sounds through a stethoscope.
Pizza, not beans?
Pizza.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in a second it's going to be, hello, James. Hello, James.
So I wonder if it's the sound of him swallowing, or if it's the sound of him chewing.
No, it's his stomach.
It's digesting.
Yeah.
And, they can slow it
stethoscope,
down. They can slow it down. They can change the pitch.
Go ahead, Chief.
I lost the transporter logger.
There's a ladybug in here, a big grasshopper, some kind of a silkworm.
And then I think back to the Day in the Life of O'Brien comic.
Oh, yeah.
Where he says, well, I beamed you out of there, but now there is a wolf inside you. So there, Mr. Gumtoo is I don't know what he's doing. He's just kind of talking to Tam and Data, and they're walking around. We're going to see a really cool effect here in a little bit. Nice little 1980s action there.
That's still really cool, though.
Putting your hand through the
That was
the
well
wall.
done.
Yes.
How do you do that without CGI?
Probably did use CGI.
You can layer the video.
That's how.
Interesting. Data couldn't put it through.
No.
Put his hand through.
You remember the episode?
I know.
Did you watch the Dauphin with us, where Wesley fell in love with the girl that was a shapeshifter?
Don't.
I think you did.
Did I?
Yeah.
So whenever she
Yes,
she shapeshifted, when you would actually see it shapeshift, the way that they did the effect was they just painted the metamorphosis scenes onto the screen.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, like just kind of like how they did Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay.
They're walking through this very organic creature. I thought this was really
it's a great
cool.
idea.
I found it a little hard to comprehend when I was a kid. Like, this is a ship that looks like a pretty depressing place to live. Now I know how a tapeworm feels.
Yeah.
Oh dear, it's always the worm, isn't it?
This almost reminds me of what Species 8472's ship would look like. In fact, that would have been a nice crossover.
With how cramped everything is in there, it makes me wonder how small the crew were.
Oh, well, I don't know. That's one room in a tight shot.
Yeah, it accommodates whatever the size of the person is, as we'll see in a minute.
Oh.
So we're gonna see a chair manifest itself out of the floor. Here we go. And this effect is called reverse motion photography. So basically they created this chair out of wax and they melted it.
Oh, cool.
And then they just played it in reverse.
That's cool.
Bring Tin Man out of danger and report our findings to Starfleet.
I'm not going back there.
Data, we are gonna Thelma and Louise this thing.
I mean, stuff like this is what makes, even though we didn't like it that much, it makes that episode, The Ensigns of Command, look a lot better, is because you see Data's trial by fire and how he realized that approach is not an approach that works most of the time, and he doesn't ever do that again.
No, not at all.
Because, without Ensigns of Command, he's like, okay, Tam, I'm just going to grab you around the waist because I can lift anybody of any size and get to somewhere where we can beam out, and that way I've followed an order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Data does a pretty good job at working with paradoxes, ethical and work-wise.
Make them understand. Our mission is to save Tin Man, and I will. But he's going to save me as well. All my life.
They plan to, looks like he plans to elope with the ship.
Yeah.
They can find peace.
All the voices.
Sounds like the ship is almost creating like a telepathic shield to quiet his mind so he can't hear the people.
Well, he was able to find something to have a symbiotic relationship with. Because it wouldn't have worked with Data, because it's with him and Data, it's communicating the way, quote, normal people communicate. With him and Tin Man, it's a very special, intimate communication that he's never had before.
Here's another stellar fart, and we push
away
the
from
ships
me, everybody!
out of the way.
And that time, even though the bridge is shifting, they just kind of stand there and lean. It's a good kind of shifting.
We have seen that spin effect at least 3 times.
Yeah.
So when Q pushed him out to meet the Borg,
where no one has gone before.
Yeah, when they met the planet with no kids, where they tried to take Wesley, and then this episode.
Ilea, yeah.
Yeah, and they just recycle the same effects over and over. It's great.
Well, it's a pretty good effect. I'd recycle it too.
Captain, on screen.
And then we're going to watch the sun supernova. Kaboom!
Well, I was wrong. Nothing happened to Russell.
Oh.
Russell lives another day.
He has a plot arc in the next episode. No.
Unclear, sir.
No, they don't really Sonia Gomez anybody again. One of the greatest characters that only ever appeared in 2 episodes.
I love how that's Data's official explanation. He doesn't say he left with the ship. It doesn't say if he escaped the explosion. Data just shows up on the bridge and says, difficult to explain, but Tam found what he's looking for. So, did Tam die, or did they escape?
This is a really sweet scene here at the end.
Yes, Counselor. It was Tam's final request that I explain his decision to the crew. But I believe it was his hope that you would understand.
So Data was the messenger.
What did happen?
I witnessed something remarkable. Individually, they were both so
Wounded. Isolated.
yes.
So they were both wounded and they were able to heal each other.
Through joining,
But that's not the same as
been healed.
codependent.
No, it's symbiotic, which is not codependent either.
Loneliness too.
When you find a comrade in suffering, you can lift each other up.
Yeah.
Data.
Because you know what the other is going through.
Empathy.
This is such a good moment for Data.
When Tin Man returned me to the Enterprise, I realized this is where I belong.
Aww.
Data's learning his place in a social environment.
And look at this. Like, would you have ever expected her to go up and give Data a hug like that?
This is
Like a friend hug.
yeah. This is really the first time we see that.
Yeah.
It's a growth episode.
And Data is, his life is all moments of like, okay, maybe I did this thing. Did I actually do the thing? And usually a person will go, well, almost, or no. And so without even having to ask, she's like, Data, you understand something like fundamental. And it makes me respect you more. It's like, they're not just colleagues, they're family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a really powerful scene between the two of them.
I hate to say it, but it was a hug and learn moment.
Yeah.
It literally was. Oh, what kind of? Mm-hmm.
Oh, I said before we go rate anything, can the rating be Riker underarm?
Yes.
Underarm hooks.
Yes.
Okay. Under armpit hooks.
Armpit hooks.
Riker armpit hooks.
Riker under armpit hooks. Say that 3 times.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5, just because it's the evolution of certain characters. Now, I don't love how they treat Tam. I think that this this supposed utopian world should be able to do better, and that's 1 star that I will knock off of it. But I think other people were paying attention to that, and it informs how people have written about the Beta Z culture. It's a great moment for Data, and it's a great moment for Troy, and it takes us down the path we've been going down before, where when we were kids, we didn't really notice what a jerk Riker was.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And Geordi knows it because he had to take basically all of the anger that he couldn't take out on Tam. He ended up kind of taking out on Geordi.
Yeah,
he's like, this is why I'm mad at this guy.
And all Geordi could do is just nod his
head.
Yeah, and take it out on poor Russell.
Yeah.
Russell's going to get a stern lecture later.
I would probably have to also give it out of a 4 out of 5. This is a really good growth episode. This is one of the first times I recall as a child. These people can be jerks, and I don't understand why my heroes are being jerks to a person who's in an impossible situation. Like, I truly understood that Tam was in pain. Now, I didn't think that it was okay for him to be a jerk, but he was obviously... His body language in almost every scene was saying, I'm wounded. Back off. Like, that's every time he was there... He'd either have his hands over his head, or he's arching his back, or he wasn't directly engaging with people unless someone cornered him for a response. But is this a, top 100 episodes for me? No, probably not. Was this a good pivot point for us to realize that the crew is not infallible? Yes. This was also a good opportunity for us to accept Data as part of the family rather than just a machine that works there. Yes. Troy and Data actually do become really good friends later on, and they share similar moments like this. And I even remember that Data does counsel with Troy from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
And here we realize he does belong. And that's some empathy that not everybody can appreciate. So but I give it 4 out of 5. It's a good story. How about you?
I would give it 3 underarm hooks and a fist in the pocket. Something that Jim actually brought up a little bit earlier in the episode. It was hard to see Riker as such a jerk, but it kind of makes sense in that he's so used to having control, and Tam represents somebody that, in a way, has control over him. He can read his thoughts. He can speak to Riker in a way that nobody else can. I would have expected Riker to be more, I'm not comfortable, but to know more what to do around people who can read his mind, given his interactions with Deanna's mother. So it was kind of weird to see him so out of his element. At the same time, it was that last scene at the end really was touching, and it really was a good summation of the episode as a whole. So as far as sci-fi, there was probably less of the technobabble would have been nice, but there was enough sci-fi to make it interesting, and there was enough human element for me. So I would give it again, probably not top 100 for me, but 3.5 out of.
Yeah, I still haven't read that book in Zodi because it takes place. The main thrust of the action takes place in the middle of Best of Both Worlds. So I'm waiting until we rewatch that episode. But my guess would be that when Riker was courting Troy, her mom said to him, "Yes, she does feel the same way about you, but you have to work at it." If it had been different, where he had actually had to win her over from the beginning, and Mrs. Troy had said, "No, she doesn't like you," that would have pushed everything in a whole new direction for him. And that would have been kind of cool to have seen him and Tam on 10 Forward, whereas Troy would just keep her mouth shut about it if Riker was hitting on somebody that didn't feel the same way. Tam would be like on the other side of the room, and it's like, "You're really upsetting this woman, Billy boy." It's like you realize you're the commanding officer of this ship, and she's not going to tell you to stop it. I am.
It would have been impossible for this episode, but I would have really loved to have seen an interaction between Troy's mother and Tam.
Yeah.
Just to get some perspective, because Troy's mother, from what I gather, is she seeks out information, but she's manipulative about it.
But she's also nurturing to people who suffer.
True.
She's edgy about it.
Mm-hmm.
She'll put you in your place, but when, like, for example, see how she interacts with children, for example.
Yeah.
Completely nurturing. And Tam is very much still like a child.
But she has more powers than Deanna and has more control over them. And I would have kind of liked to have seen the sort of Betazoid perceptions of people with Tam's, for lack of a better term, his condition.
Mm-hmm.
It would have made the episode kind of impossible to have her there, but that is an interaction I would have liked to have seen and would have given it a higher score. But
yeah,
3.5 is what I got.
I'm imagining what that would have been like, is that because she's pretty open about stuff, but he would have been able to see things that she considers to be taboo, which would be like really, really taboo.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to go deep for her to be offended by something, but he'd find it
right
away.
Very true. So it'd be kind of like that guy who can call you
Yeah.
out. Well, Jim, how about you?
I think I'd also give it a 3.5 out of 5 under armpit hooks. I want to give it a higher score. I think that what kept me from doing so was that I couldn't get behind the actor that played Tam. I couldn't muster up a whole lot of sympathy for him because he seemed to come off as such a jerk when he first got off, when he first boarded the spaceship. I think that if I would have believed his suffering more, I couldn't get into his suffering. His suffering wasn't believable for me. And I think that it would have been a magnificent episode otherwise, because it was a great storyline. The last episode I believe I recorded with you two was a Klingon heavy episode. And I've come to the conclusion that I don't really like the Klingon backstory just as a whole. It doesn't interest me because it's all about like grr, war, watch me be, gruff. And I'm finding myself really drawn to what the Betazoid culture is all about. Mm-hmm. So that really fascinated me. I loved seeing more about that, and I want to know more about that entire culture. And I really liked the data. The data was under a microscope again, and anytime that we get to explore data a little bit more, I'm really into it. Especially, Are you a robot or are you a human being? Where do you stand on the ship? Where do you stand as a creature? Are you alive? Are you not? Do you have feelings? Do you not? I think that's really fascinating to me. I would watch a series, like there's Picard is out right now. I would watch a series that's all about Data. I would be really fascinated. I would be all into that. And I liked seeing the crew behave in different ways and not just prim and proper and polite like everybody else was saying. So, yeah, I really liked the human element. I liked bringing up the aspect of suicide. I kind of feel like it makes me wonder what the writer's opinion is. Well, not the writers, like I guess the producers or whatever opinion on suicide. Because every time there is actually like a suicide, it's always seen as something good or honorable. Because the person that I first watched commit suicide, it was with honor. And this one, it seemed like he also kind of died with honor because he found kinship with suffering. And
there's a resolution.
Yeah. So that's my question, is like, what do they think about it?
Well, it's a mystery. We don't actually know if they lived or not.
True. No, the first guy definitely died, I think.
You think?
On Star Trek.
Oh no,
I'm
talking about Tin Man here.
No, I don't know. I assume he did. Yeah. Or they rode off into infinity together. So, who knows? I don't know how long Betazoids live.
It just grows. Tin Man just kind of morphs into his face and he kind of runs into something.
I can
see. I'm Tam.
I was just.
I'm gigantic now.
I could totally see, like Tin Man growing up to be like this weird Groot, but like, you know, with more words in his vocabulary.
It's going to sound weird, but just fly your shuttle into my mouth. These aren't really teeth, and I don't have a throat.
But yeah, 3.5 out of 5. I want to give it a higher score, but I can't.
Yeah, so basically the acting could have been a little better.
Yeah, if the acting was on point and I could have actually felt something for Tam, I think this would actually have been one of my favorite episodes.
That's kind of, this kind of goes into the deeper question, is like, acting on Star Trek, definitely there's a pattern to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very specific brand and type. When you watch other Star Trek series like Deep Space Nine or Enterprise or Voyager, it's very canned. It's contained in a very specific way. And so I'm wondering if we're starting to see, the boundaries of that.
Okay.
They want him to act a certain way, not I don't know. I can't really.
Yeah, normal seeming people. The only time I can think of that, and again, they're treated like aberrations, is what's the name of that group that Bashir works with?
Oh yeah, it was. I know you're talking about their augments.
Yeah,
yeah.
They have a certain name, but it's like they all act normal, but they act like they're nuts.
Huh.
Actually, that's probably a great way to look crazy on television, is to act like a normal person.
A real person.
Huh. Nice little stage trick.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for listening along. We'd also like you to tune into a neighboring sister show. What is this called?
View from the Bridge is over on the Two True Freaks, which have definitely carried our load a few times. You can listen to us talk to me and Matt talk about Picard over there, and they have a show called Star Trek Monthly Mondays that has covered every episode of Star Trek The Next Generation before Tin Man.
Oh,
today,
we're not keeping score.
We're not keeping score, but we have now +1 Star Trek Monthly Mondays.
Wow. Well, there we go. Well, folks, with that, we look forward to making another wonderful episode for you. I believe, what's the next episode?
We'll see you in Hollow Pursuits.
Okay, with that, have a wonderful day.
Smoke them if you got them.
That's right, shoppers. It's time for the Daily Deal. Head over right now to the Bookshelf Book and Magazine Store to receive $10 off any purchases over $50. This is a special offer and only good for the next 45 minutes. So be quick and head over to the Bookshelf Book and Magazine Store, located in the East Wing. next to McDonald's. And thanks for shopping with us.
Why am I interviewing you guys?
So you're the guest.
So Sascha, what is Star Trek
Hi,
Next
I am the
Generation?
guest.
So Sascha, what is Star Trek Next Generation?
Seek us out at Next Generation's First Generation at iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. Music credits include Electric Car by Poddington Bear, Broke for Free, As Colorful as Ever, Glass Android and Water Fountain by Lee Rosevere, Chaparro by Broke for Free. Audio engineering by Sascha Shouties. Chief Meme Maker and episode cover credit goes to Matthew Kirshner. Logo and graphic art design credit goes to David Clawwitter. And special thanks to Patrick Delmore for working with other podcasts to make sure the good word gets out.
Do you have a podcast that you think people should be listening to? Send us your promos and we'll play them on the show. If you'd like to email the show, you can email us at nextgenfirstgenpod@gmail.com. I've been Patrick Delmore.
And this is Sascha Shouties. Thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day.
Good night.